monitor. ADCKB monitor. Siapa sih ADCKB? Udah bisa dibuka belum?
Ini nggak ada bangunan. Ini dari rumah saya. Senyum.
The International Symposium is officially open. Itu aja. International Symposium kan? Nanti bareng ya. The International Symposium is officially open. Gong pertama, gong pas ibu mau pukul ke gong kedua ini.
symposium, please pay attention to the safety information.
Auditorium BMKG Jakarta. Saat ini, Bapak Ibu berada di dalam ruang Auditorium BMKG yang terletak di lantai 1 gedung BMKG. Jika dalam keadaan darurat, Bapak Ibu dapat keluar melalui pintu yang tersedia. Untuk ruang Auditorium BMKG, mempunyai beberapa pintu keluar yang dapat digunakan. Pertama, Bapak Ibu bisa menggunakan pintu-pintu yang ada di belakang Bapak Ibu sekalian, langsung menuju tangga ke lantai dasar dan keluar ke area parkir gedung Auditorium BMKG. Kedua, Bapak Ibu dapat menggunakan jalur yang ada di belakang podium yang menuju ke gedung utama BMKG dan turun ke lobi melalui tangga. Jika Bapak Ibu berada di tribun atas ruang auditorium, Bapak Ibu bisa turun terlebih dahulu lewat tangga di ujung samping kanan dan kiri Bapak Ibu sekalian, dan kemudian keluar lewat pintu-pintu utama. Dalam keadaan darurat, Bapak Ibu tidak diperkenankan menggunakan lift. Untuk penanggulangan sementara, di ruang auditorium BMKG tersedia 2 kotak hidran yang terletak di ujung belakang ruangan ini atau belakang Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terdapat juga 1 kotak hidran di belakang tribun atas ruang auditorium. Dalam keadaan darurat, Bapak Ibu dapat berkumpul di area parkir gedung auditorium. Merokok di dalam ruangan tidak diperkenankan sesuai peraturan pemerintah yang berlaku. Demikian petunjuk keamanan dari kami. Apabila Bapak Ibu membutuhkan bantuan, dapat menghubungi tim kami di nomor yang tertera. Terima kasih dan sukses selalu.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like kindly advise for all delegates and participants in this conference to switch the mobile phone into silent mode to avoid any interruption during the conference. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Excellency Head of Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics for Indonesia, Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati. Excellency Head of National Disaster Management Agency, Letjen Doni Munardo. Excellency Director of UNESCO Jakarta, Professor Sabaskan. The Honorable Ambassador for Indonesia from ASEAN, China, France, Germany, Japan, and United States of America. Excellency Head of Tsunami Unit, IOC UNESCO Secretariat, Mr. Torkild Arup.
Excellency Representative of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, Mr. Andre Omer Siregar. Excellency Deputy for Infrastructure Coordination of Ministry Coordinator for Maritime Affairs, Mr. Rahman Hidayat. Distinguished representative ministries, agencies, international and national organizations, distinguished speakers and presenters, to all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clara.
And my name is Fadil. It is a great honor to be your master of ceremony in this beautiful morning, Thursday, 26th of September 2019.
On behalf of Agency of Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics, we are delightful and honored to be with you at the opening ceremony of International Symposium on the Lesson Learned from the 2018 tsunamis in Palu and Sunda Strait, which will start from 26 until 27 September 2019.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us start with the first agenda of the opening. I would like to invite all of you to sing Indonesian anthem that will be led by the choir and marching band from State College of Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics. I would like to invite all participants to stand up.
In memories of Tsunami Palu 2018, we would like to invite you to stay to take minutes of silence. Moment of silence begins. Complete. Thank you. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the welcoming remarks. First, I would like to invite representative from the Indian Ocean Rim Association, Mr. Andre Omer Siregar, to giving welcoming remarks. To Mr. Andre Omer Siregar, the time is yours.
Excellencies, Your Excellency Bapak Doni Monardo, Head of National Disaster Management Agency, Her Excellency Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati, Head of Meteorological, Climatological and Geophysical Agency, distinguished heads of international and regional organizations this morning, distinguished ambassadors present today also, colleagues from various ministries and government institutions, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you today. It is indeed a great honor for me on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also as the Troika of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, I have the opportunity to speak before such a gathering of great experts. At the outset, I'm proud to say that Indonesia has been part of this discussion on the IORA since the beginning and has been continuing the discussion to promote cooperation in the Indian Ocean region. As you can see from the title of our meeting today, we are currently discussing ways in which we can commemorate 1 year of the disaster that beheld us on the issue in Palu. Just a bit of a background, as you might know, we welcome several IORA representative speakers here today. But for the record, we should note that the Indian Ocean has always had a strategic importance, holding 1/3 of the world population. It has a richness of diverse resources and also home to major sea routes connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe and America. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, during the IORA summit in 2017, President Joko Widodo and other leaders of IORA stated that the adoption of the Jakarta Concord as a key milestone to intensify cooperation in taking advantage of potential areas of cooperation in Indian Ocean, as well as overcoming various challenges. The Jakarta Concord sets out ways and means to strengthen regional architecture and encourage regional cooperation, particularly in addressing disaster risk management as one of the agreed priorities in IORA. Indian Ocean states that occupy south and west part of Asia and Australia to the east part of Africa is geographically prone to different types of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, cyclones, floods, and many others. And history has recorded its huge impact in economic loss and loss of life. As you might also know, this morning we also recorded an earthquake off the seas in Ambon, in which we are still awaiting for the response and the expected damages. But what we made note today is that this meeting is even becoming more relevant and crucial. And this is where IORA has its mission to build resilience in the region by enhancing cooperation with international organizations and agencies, in particular the IOC and the UNESCO, in exploring creation of IORA centers for excellence in disaster risk management, in training capacity building programs, and also in developing resilience through early warning systems and regional exercises and coordinated disaster risk reduction. To this end, IORA has also established cluster groups for disaster risk management with India as the coordinating country. And the cluster group will be the core of the disaster risk management cooperation to enhance the forum in IORA. Ladies and gentlemen, realizing that Indonesia has such experience in natural disasters, especially in tsunami and earthquake, the IORA sees the importance of these relevant lessons to be shared, to be known, and to explore new ways for greater collaboration and cooperation. As I mentioned earlier, Indonesia will be holding a workshop to review the experience made and lessons learned 1 year after the tsunami disaster in Indonesia. Participation of IORA member states in this event is important to ensure that the dissemination of the conclusions and their adaptations to the specific situation in the respective member states, allowing them to realign and adjust their own tsunami early warning systems to the latest standards. At the same time, the IOC, UNESCO through IOTC has the same intention, that we may collect all our experiences and see what we have learned since the last year's 2018 tsunami in Indonesia. By participation of both, I believe that we could benefit great exchange and even explore new ways to prevent or to be more ready when such disaster arises. For the record, I wish to inform that I'm proud to welcome IORA members who are participating today, such as Bangladesh, the Comoros, India, Iran, Kenya, Madagascar, Malaysia, Maldives, Seychelles, Somalia, South Africa, Sri Lanka. who are gathered in Jakarta today. Finally, Excellencies, let me take this opportunity to extend my deepest appreciation and gratitude to the organizers and partners of this event in making sure this event could be successful and possible. A special thanks come to Ibu Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati and her staff for kindly facilitating the IORA workshop in the BMKG headquarters. And also a special thanks to the cooperation with UNESCO IOC and the IOTC office, as well as the great support by IORA dialogue partners from Germany, namely the GIZ. I wish a successful discussion, and I hope that we will find new ways to deepen our cooperation to engage in this natural events that always occur upon us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Andre Omar Siregar, for the welcoming remarks.
We would like to invite the Director and Representative of UNESCO Office Jakarta, Professor Syahbaz Khan, to give the welcoming remarks. Professor Syahbaz Khan, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Salamat pagi. It's a very good day as we gather here because we have to not only commemorate but understand the reasons behind the disasters like deadly tsunamis. What happened here in Indonesia, in central Sulawesi, Palu and Donggala in 2019 and 2018. Those tsunamis have been recognized as one of the most complex phenomena which we have never encountered before. So that's where science and technology has to come together. And the role of science and technology, especially in the Agency for Meteorology, Climatology and Geophysics for Indonesia, and the head Professor Dewi Korita Karnawati, as we met last time, we said we will work together with UNESCO's International Ocean Commission, scientists from around the world, to find what are the reasons, what can we learn, how our early warning systems are working, and where are the gaps. So that's why we gather again and to report on those issues. So I thank you for your wonderful leadership and to guide us, to work with us, to work with the International Ocean Commission as a very important member, and for disaster risk reduction, not only for Indonesia, but for the world. Also, disaster risk reduction is such an important job, and we are very delighted today to have the head of National Disaster Management Agency, Lieutenant General Doni Monardo with us. Thank you very much, sir, for coming to work with us. And your job is a very complex job, and science has to help you to make the right decisions at the right time. And we have to work together very, very closely. And also, the role of the coordinating ministry for maritime affairs with His Excellency Palahut has taken it very seriously, and the Bapanas has taken it very seriously. We are very happy that we have the representative from the ministry, Bapa Rahman Hadayat. Also, the international support for Indonesia is very important, and we are very delighted to have the ambassadors for Indonesia from ASEAN, from China, from France, Germany, Japan, USA. And you just heard our dear colleague from Indian Ocean Rim Association, Mr. Andre Omar Siriga. AHA Center is an important part of ASEAN, and working together is important with them. So we thank Ms. Adelina Kamal to be here. And very importantly, our IOC colleagues from Perth and from Paris, they have made a special effort to come here. And Mr. Tolked Arup, thank you for coming and to link with very important people here. Distinguished representatives of the ministries, national and international organizations, dear colleagues coming from many different countries, ladies and gentlemen. So as I mentioned before, the tsunamis which struck here and the scale of the earthquake related to that, and the tsunamis which were submarine and the tsunamis on the land, it's a very complex phenomena. As scientists, we know some things, but most things we don't know. So we have to work together to avoid this tragic loss of life. We need to understand how can we deal with these complex systems which are interconnected in such a way that many things what we know with our models may not be able to explain. And that needs international cooperation. And that's where the role of the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System established by IOC is of critical importance. So you will be discussing the findings. I'm a scientist in the area of natural sciences myself, and I don't claim that I know enough in my own area. We only know what we can publish, how can we connect with each other, how do we search and research. So many of the facts which have been found, both the upstream components, the downstream components of the warning itself, there are major gaps which has been recognized. So I can see this will only help us become better. First of all, to do better science of the warning, to do better modeling systems, but very importantly, how do we make public understand why these phenomena are so complex, what we are saying, how people realize what are the related aspects, or can we become more and more efficient in saving lives by the early warnings when the public knows our message very well. So the gaps in terms of the warning, in terms of information, in terms of landslides, marine landslides, volcanoes, near field events, all this will help us. We have very little time, as we know, which is only in minutes. I work in the area of hydrology, where the floods can give us times of, let's say, few hours to few days. But here we are talking about few minutes. And forecasting floods is so difficult. How can we forecast tsunamis with accuracy and the timeliness which is needed? So that's where UNESCO IOC is really doing a wonderful job for all the nations of UNESCO, and working together, finding the cooperation which is needed and publishing that result into journals of high repute so that the scientists can continue to understand the big challenges which we have here. So that's where the missions which have been undertaken, we are very grateful to all the scientists who contributed to those missions requested by the Indonesian government, of course, and with the great support of BMKG and with our colleagues from all over the world. So I am very happy to know there are 60 participants international, and there are many more. As I know, there are more than 150 participants, 23 countries which are represented here, and maybe many more will come. So I have a number, maybe more than 200 people over these 2 days will be benefiting from this knowledge. UNESCO is a global body of United Nations. And this is the only part of the United Nations which brings the science and technology together in the area of oceans, in the areas of innovation, in the areas linking water, natural resources, and very importantly, bringing the best of the scientists from around the world. So in that regard, we have an office here in Jakarta, which is the Regional Office for Sciences for Asia and Pacific. We have Indian Ocean Tsunami related work in our house in Jakarta, which is also funded by the BMKG. So that is a special effort between IOC and UNESCO. I was recently meeting with the Minister, His Excellency the Minister of Bapanas, Pa Bambang, who addressed United Nations recently. And for those colleagues who come from the other countries, it would be of interesting for you to know the 100 years of Indonesia by 2045. Indonesia is a great nation with many smart targets. One of the targets is to become among the top 5 economies. So His Excellency, the Minister, has laid out a wonderful pathway, but very importantly, one of the critical areas is how do we make sure Indonesia is resilient against disasters with the right kind of science and technology and the knowledge, and that's where the role of BMKG and all the participating parts of science and technology are very, very important, and the role of the National Disaster Management Agency. So UNESCO continues to work together with the Indonesian government, being very proud to work with this nation, number one nation in the ASEAN, and a nation with the hope for the world. So we work together, we look into the findings. We are very sad with all those tragic events with was the loss of the people, the lives and property, but inshallah, as they say, with the knowledge we gain, with your cooperation, we will make Indonesia safer, stronger, and a stronger and safer Indonesia will make the whole world safer and stronger. And as we say in the United Nations system, this will make us stronger by leaving no one behind in this knowledge. So thank you, dear Professor Kornawati, for initiating this, and we are here today because of your great efforts, and we look forward to all the deliberations and recommendations, for not only for IOC, but all the people who are waiting for this knowledge so their nations can protect themselves against such disasters, and for scientists to be of more service to society. Terima kasih, have a wonderful conference.
Thank you, Professor Syahbaz Khan, for the warm welcoming remarks.
Next, we would like to invite the Assistant Deputy Minister for Infrastructure of the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs, Mr. Rahman Hidayat, for welcoming remarks. For Mr. Rahman Hidayat, the time is yours.
Honorable Head of BMKG, Ibu Profesor Dwi Korita Karnawati, Head of BNPB, Bapak Letnan Jenderal Doni Monardo, Executive Secretary of UNESCO IOC, representative from Indian Ocean Rim Association IORA, our guest international speaker, my colleagues, Indonesian experts, scientists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you all. It is really grateful that we are now able to gather here in the International Symposium on the lesson learned from the 2018 tsunami in Palu and Sunda Strait. The symposium is organized jointly by the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs, the Ministry of Research, Technology and Higher Education, the Agency for Meteorology, Climatology and Geophysics, the National Disaster Management Agency, BNPB, jointly with the UNESCO IOC, the ICG, IOTM, WMS Secretariat and the International Tsunami Information Center, ITIC, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, supported by United Nations for Disaster Risk Reduction, United Nations Development Program, UNDP, GIZ, I'm sorry, cannot spell it in Germany, GFZ, also Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, and the Indonesian Tsunami Expert Association, IATSI, or Ikatan Ahli Tsunami Indonesia. As we know, on September 2018, the Palu earthquake struck at a relatively shallow depth of 17 kilometers off the east coast of Sulawesi Island with 7.5 magnitude quake and tsunami struck near the city of Palu on the other side of the island last year, killing more than 4,300 people. Later at nearly end of the year, Indonesia was suffering from the Sunda Strait tsunami of 22nd December 2018, following an eruption and partial collapse of the Anak Krakatau volcano that killed about 426 people. Following 2018 Palu and Sunda Strait tsunami, Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs had taken immediate action in order to coordinate the deployment and mobilization resources to help and to survey the affected areas. Those include coordinating the international aids and scientists together with line ministries and agencies. Baruna Jaya Research Vessel was deployed to Palu to bring charity and researchers to study the area, as well as Navy Research Vessel Spica. Today and tomorrow, scientists and experts from Indonesia, Singapore, Europe, United States, India will present results of scientific studies from various fields such as geology, geophysics, hydrography, social sciences, etc. Attending today in this symposium are representatives from local and central government institutions, researchers, practitioners of disaster mitigation, and others. We hope this international symposium will give benefit to all of participants, especially for scientists for update some key issue of studies. Thank you for everyone for your kind participation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridwan, for the kind welcoming remarks.
We will now hear the welcoming remarks of the Executive Secretary of UNESCO IOC, to be delivered by Dr. Thorkild Arup. For Dr. Thorkild Arup, the time is yours.
Good morning, Excellencies and Honorable Representatives, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Executive Secretary of IOC, Dr. Vladimir Ryabinin, I would like to warmly welcome you to this symposium. Post-tsunami field surveys play an important role for understanding tsunamis and developing the tools and programs necessary to mitigate their effects. Several Indonesian teams have carried out surveys, and an international tsunami survey team under the auspices of IOC was also arranged following the Palu event. It was arranged following a formal request from Indonesia, and it was organized in collaboration with Indonesian authorities led by the National Commission of Indonesia for IOC UNESCO and the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and IOC's UNESCO Indian Ocean Tsunami Information Center and the UNESCO IOC International Tsunami Information Center. While post-tsunami field surveys have been carried out for many years, the formal designation of an international tsunami survey team was first used after the second September 1992 Nicaragua tsunami. Since then, more than 30 ITSTs have been organized under the auspices of UNESCO IOC and collaborating partners. IOC has also published guidelines and best practices for how to undertake such surveys. And I'm happy to note that several of the scientists that contributed are here today. In line with these guidelines, today's symposium is part of the responsibility of an international tsunami survey team to report the findings, analysis, and recommendations from surveys. And in this case, surveys carried out by 7 independent teams. Ladies and gentlemen, the near-field tsunamis naturally put much focus on local community preparedness, awareness, and the capacity for self-protection through self-evacuation. At the same time, one country's near-field event is also a potential far-field event for another country, and a system and framework for detection, exchange of data, alerts, sharing of information, and cooperation is essential. UNESCO IOC has introduced a set of tsunami-ready indicators to improve coastal community preparedness for tsunami emergencies and to ensure structural and systematic approach and a structural and systematic approach in building community preparedness. UNESCO IOC encourages the member states to make use of this set of indicators in building and sustaining their community capacity for tsunamis. Beyond Indonesia, there is much interest in learning from the events and how to address atypical and near-field tsunamis in the Indian Ocean tsunami warning and mitigation system, as well as in the 3 other regional tsunami warning systems in the Pacific, Caribbean, and the Northeast Atlantic and Mediterranean, all systems that IOC coordinates. Pushing for enhancements of hazard assessments, detection and observing networks, and early warning procedures remain of importance. Within the Indian Ocean tsunami warning system, a task team is presently examining tsunami preparedness for a near-field tsunami hazard. This task team will assist member states threatened by near-field tsunami threats to adapt and integrate their national warning chains and standard operating procedures, particularly in relation to community preparedness for self-evacuation. The Intergovernmental Coordination Group under the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System has very recently also initiated implementation of the UNESCO-funded project on strengthening tsunami warning in the northwestern Indian Ocean through regional cooperation. This deals with hazard assessment of the Makran source zone and enhancements of tsunami warning chains of member states to deal with a near-field tsunami hazard. In closing, I want to warmly thank Indonesia, the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs, and BMKG for hosting this symposium, as well as the many other sponsors that are listed on the banner behind me. I hope for a very informative and productive symposium, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thorkret Arum, for the remarks.
And now we are going to have the official opening remark by Head of the Agency for Meteorology, Climatology and Geophysics of Indonesia, Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati. To Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellency, Head of National Disaster Management Agency, BNPB, Excellency Lieutenant General Doni Mornado, thank you very much for your attendance. We understand that you are very much busy recently, just having a lot of duty across Indonesia, but still you provide a special time for all of us. Thank you very much. Also, the Excellency Head of Tsunami Unit, IOC UNESCO Secretariat, Mr. Thorkild Arab, thank you very much for having very long 1,000 miles traveling to be together with us, to provide strong spirit to all of us. Thank you very much. And also the Excellency Director of UNESCO Jakarta, Professor Zabas Khan, who always very supportive for all of us with all of our educational and scientific programs. Thanks for your continued support. And also, Excellency Minister Coordinator for Maritime Affairs, Excellency Assistant Deputy for Infrastructure Coordination of Ministry Coordinator for Maritime Affairs, Dr. Rahmat Hidayat. Yes, thank you, Dr. Rahmat Hidayat, for your support, for your strong support. And the Excellency ICG IoT WMS Secretariat, Dr. Srinivas Kumar Tumala, thanks always for your present, for your continued support to all of us. And of course, the Excellency Head of IoT BMKG Program Office, Dr. Ardhito M. Khodiat. Thank you, Bapak. Without you, I don't believe this meeting can be held, can be hosted here. Thank you for all of your support. And actually, we still have several excellencies guests here who was very, very keen to support the establishment of Indonesian tsunami warning system. Among those, we have here Dr. Yanso Paheluakam. Thank you very much, Dr. Yanso Paheluakam. He's one of the founding fathers of the Indonesian early warning system, as well as my senior and my advisor, strong advisor, Dr. Andi Ekasakia here. Without him, I could not stand up here. So thank you very much. Of course, distinguished guests who have traveled miles away from Indonesia, the scientists from all over the world, from United States, from Iran, from countries along Indian Ocean, from Australia, perhaps also from Japan. I'm sorry if your country has not yet mentioned here because my memory is too limited. So thanks for all of you, and of course for Indonesian scientists who are very keen to participate in this workshop, this symposium, to share their experiences and knowledge in order to accelerate the development of Indonesian resilience. So thanks for all of you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, welcome to BMKG, that's the agency, Indonesian Agency for Meteorology, Climatology and Geophysics. It is my privilege to deliver an opening remarks for this international symposium on the lesson learned from the 2018 tsunamis in Palu and Sunda Strait. It is impressive to see such large participation in this symposium from leaders and representatives from the government, countries and the sectoral groups. Indeed, your presence here today clearly shows the ever-increasing attention of the global community on this very important issue of tsunami disaster. By the way, just about 14 minutes before 7 this morning, we have another quite strong earthquake in Ambon. And now we are still waiting for, I don't know, Pak Rahmat, you are in charge. So I'm really worried you are here. So please check again how is the situation, because it was 6.8 magnitude, then updated to become 6.6 or 6.5. Indeed, it's very strong, and the depth of hypocenter is 10 kilometers. It is shallow, so hopefully no bad impact of that. And well, please update us as soon as possible that situation. And luckily, there was no tsunami, despite of the site is really sensitive or really vulnerable for having tsunami. Well, let's see. Hopefully, not bad news we will have. Again, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the earthquake and tsunami, especially in this symposium, and especially for Indonesian region, our most challenges are the complexity and uncertainty of Indonesian region. I believe most of you have understood that we are living in the junctions of three huge plates, that the oceanic plates of Pacific and oceanic plates of Australia, which are subducted underneath the continental plate of Eurasia. Those result in continuous dynamic active plate tectonic, which then brings to the situation with a lot of submarine active fault, what we call that the megathrust or megathrust fault, as well as localized active fault either in submarine or on the land. And we realized that most of our tsunami is the near field tsunami, and most of our tsunami is tectonic tsunami. However, then, since Sunda Strait tsunami, that was the alarm for us, despite of the theoretical knowledge that a typical tsunami, especially the volcanic tsunami, is only about, the probability is only about 5% among many other most probable tsunami, that's tectonic tsunami. In fact, that happened during our life here. So that's why the lesson learned from us is really, really important and very challenging. That the key for resiliency, we have two keys of resiliency. The first key, that the science and technological driven, and the second key is the socio-cultural driven, which we expect we will have truly discussions, truly knowledge sharing, experience sharing, in order to answer those key challenges which is related to the science and technology, that the science of tsunami and earthquake, as well as related to the socio-cultural sciences. Well, we do understand that uniqueness or anomalies always happen, like what happened in Palu tsunami. It was induced by the strike-slip fault, which commonly strike-slip fault will not result in tsunami. But in fact, we have a typical tsunami, submarine landslides, which is very near to the coastline. Then the tsunami arrival, according to the last investigation, it came in 2 minutes, not 3 minutes. The previous investigation, we have 3 minutes arrival of tsunami at Palu, but then the last investigation reported in 2 minutes tsunami arrived. 2 minutes after the strike of the earthquake. That means we must to speed up with the speed of tsunami, because our warning system up to now is designed only for tectonical tsunami. It was designed in 2008 due to the Banda Aceh tsunami. It was tectonic tsunami, and it was designed, that's why it was, the early warning system was designed for the tectonic tsunami. And we consider the arrival time of the tsunami will always to be 20 minutes after the strike of the earthquake. But in fact, 11 years later, we have experience with 2 minutes time arrival of tsunami. So we must improve our science and technology in order to have capability, strong capability to compete with the speed of the tsunami. And another event in Sunda Straits, we must improve our system with a typical tsunami. Then finally, realizing that we could not yet compete with the arrival of the tsunami, so we must back to apply our local wisdom. The local wisdom which remind us to immediately run up to the level up to 20 meters when we feel the ground shaking at the coast area for about more than 20 seconds. Now we remind the people, when you have more than 10 seconds, just immediately run up to the upper level at 20 meters beyond. So we must consider the earthquake itself as the early warning system. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that means literacy, public outreach, and public education is a must. We could not neglect that. And I believe during the symposium, we also have special session on that public education. And finally, we learn that leadership, the local leader, especially also the sustainability of the local policy and national policy, is really very important to support the continuation of the sustainability of Indonesian resiliency. Why? Because actually Palu was one of most prepared sites in Indonesia for earthquake and tsunami. In 2009 up to 2012, Indonesian government have special mission in that area because we have predicted that earthquake and tsunami will occur quite soon in 2000. So that's why National Agency for Disaster Management together with Bappenas launched a special mission funded by SCCDR in that time to empower the local government and local university as well as the local people to be prepared for earthquake and tsunami. And also this program was continued by New Zealand government, supported by New Zealand government as well, continues with the public education, and also the local government has prepared microzonations for the earthquake, and then they have developed the microzonation for the spatial planning of the city. And the planning has been presented in 2014 at the National Coordinating Meeting for Disaster Management in Solo. So everything has been prepared up to 2014. And we are waiting for the earthquake and tsunami. Everyone prepared at that time. But I don't know, that's luckily or unluckily, no earthquake and tsunami happened. Then the local leader changed because it's only for 5 years. The local leader changed, the local officers changed, the man who was responsible for the national planning has moved to work to be responsible for the finance. So rotate, and everyone knew. Everyone has not yet really, I mean in the local government, they are new, and all the plan somehow start back to zero. Then when no other starting program for the empowerment, suddenly tsunami and earthquake and tsunami comes. So all the preparation that has been prepared since 2009 up to 2014 seems no impact on that. So this is very important lesson learned for us, how we can sustain the works we have done. Like we have prepared this, but then if the local authority changes, so everything starts from zero. Well, we must think, we must work harder in order to solve this problem, and that's why we have this symposium. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I really again appreciate for all of your all of your participation in this symposium, and over the next 2 days, we do hope we can have more productive, more fruitful discussion, more lesson to be learned, and the most important thing, we can have more chance to implement, to execute properly all that we have prepared. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I would conclude this remark by again thanks to you, to all of you for your strong support, for the successful, for your strong support to have this successful symposium, and by encouraging you to participate in this event in a spirit of collaboration and with a willingness to study and respect. I wish you again a productive and beneficial 2-day session, and I would like to declare that the International Symposium on the lesson learned from the 2018 tsunami in Palu and Sunda Straits is officially open. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati, for the encouraging opening remarks. We would like to ask you to stay for the opening and would like to invite Legend Doni Monardo, Professor Syabas Khan, Mr. Andre Omer Siregar, Mr. Rahman Hidayat, and Dr. Torkild Arup to the stage together with Professor Dwi Korita to hit the gong as the sign of opening.
I would like to ask all of participants to count down with me in 3, 2, 1. Thank you for the opening. We would like to request all of you to be seated. And we would like to request Professor Dwi Korita to deliver the keynote speech. Tadi udah sekalian. Oh.
Now we're heading for agenda by taking group photo sessions. We would like to invite all the participants to join the group photos. We would like to invite you to stay in your seat for photo sessions. Now we would like to invite the VIP guests. Jadi ini VIP guys. Now we would like to invite the VIP guests to the podium for the group photos. Kamu yang ngomong atau gimana ini? Yang mana? Yang ini, in the front row. Now we would like to invite all the participants to join to the front row for the group photos. Thank you. And we also would like to invite all the participants to join to the front row for group photos. We repeat again. We would like to invite all the participants to join to the front row for the group photos.
Habis ini kan fotonya ambilnya dari atas. Setelah itu baru Ibu keynote.
Iya.
Ya.
We repeat again. We would like to invite all the participants to join to the front row for the group photos. Standing aja. We would like to invite all the participants to take the group photos. We repeat again. We would like to invite all the participants to stand and join the group photo on the front row.
Mohon izin Bapak-Bapak yang di belakang bisa berdiri dan merapat ke tengah. Bapak yang duduk di belakang berdiri dan merapat ke tengah. Pak, mohon izin Pak, lebih merapat lagi Pak, persiapan kita foto.
So,
Mohon izin Bapak, kembali lagi kita foto ke arah tribun, bisa melihat ke arah itu balik kanan dan arah ke tribun.
dear ladies and gentlemen, please do not have a seat first because we will have another take picture with a different side. Yeah, the focus to the upstairs. Thomas, please don't go here. We will have another picture session with the different side to the upstairs. Nanti ya. Wait, later, oke? Lupa dia bahasa Indonesia. So everybody please more curve for having a better, for having a good picture. Bapak Ibu mohon untuk agak lebih merapat supaya hasil fotonya lebih bagus.
Thank you. We would like to invite you to be seated. Okay.
Mohon izin Bapak Ibu bisa kembali duduk kembali ke kursi masing-masing. Karena setelah ini masih ada keynote speak.
We would like to invite you to get back to your seat because we will have keynote speech presented by Head
Cek
of
1,
Agency
2.
Meteorology, Climatology, and
Cek 1.
Geophysics Indonesia. We would like to invite you to be seated because in no time we will hear the keynote speech from the Head of Agency Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics. We announce again, we would like to invite you to stay in your seat because in no time we will hear the keynote speech from the Head of Agency Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, the agenda still continue. Please, for everyone, still to be seated in their own place. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would request all of you to be seated, and we would like to request Professor Dwi Korita to deliver the keynote speech on Indonesian Master Plan for Tsunami Early Warning System and Inclusion of Atypical Tsunami Hazard. To Professor Dwi Korita, the time is yours.
Again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to continue for the next keynote speech regarding the Indonesian Master Plan for Tsunami Early Warning System and the inclusion of a typical tsunami. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Next slide, please. Ini pointersnya, slide. Nggak ada. Pointersnya mana? Ada nggak? Well, again, in this speech or in this keynote, I would like to highlight again the challenges and how is the existing end-to-end systems and the lesson learned, as well as the strategic innovation for the master plan for tsunami early warning system. Next, as I mentioned before, that the problem of Indonesian tsunami is related to the fact that we have mostly near-field tsunami. And in the past, we have mostly the tectonic tsunami. Unfortunately, now we realize that the occurrence of a typical tsunami, that is the tsunami which is not induced by the tectonic, must also be properly addressed. So that's why now we are working for the modernization of the Indonesian early warning system. And before move to the modernization, I would like to show you, next slide, please, the situation which we could not avoid, that we have very sharp increment of the earthquake events since 2017. Normally before that, we have average 5,000 events every year. But starting 2017, we have 7,000 events, even though in 2018, we have 11,920 events. All of those not because of our detector, our system has been improved, so we can record it a lot more events. Not because of that. The system remained the same, but the events itself increased sharply. Among thousands of events, the felt earthquake is about, in average, 300 events every year. It was 200 events every year, but starting 2017, we have the felt or the strong earthquake is about 360th event every year. Regarding that the events of earthquake increase, so the potential of tsunami is also increased. So that's why learning from Lombok, Palu, and Sunda Strait tsunami, we must move on for the modernization of our existing early warning system. Please, next slide. This is the existing early warning system, which was established in 2008. And again, it was designed for the tectonic tsunami. And for the warning system, it is equipped or facilitated with 18,000 scenario of tsunami models. And next slide, please. And it was also the system up to now is also designed for providing early warning system in 5 minutes. 5 minutes after the ground shaking, after the record of the secondary seismic occurrence. So 5 minutes, we learn it is too late. It is too late to catch up with the tsunami, the near-field tsunami, which can arrive in 2 minutes. And looking at this existing system or end-to-end system for tsunami early warning. Our system was developed without any buoy. Since 2008, the Indonesian tsunami early warning system never designed, never developed with the buoy, because we consider our tsunami is near field tsunami. If we rely on the buoy, that will be late warning system, because the buoy will be very ideal if the source of the tsunami is quite far away from the coastline. So this is the reason why, like our founding fathers, consider our early warning was rely on the seismic monitoring. Again, our early warning was rely on the seismic monitoring. This is very important to be understood, because after the event of tsunami Palu, it was international hawks which believe Indonesia could not manage the tsunami because we lost all of our buoy. That's perfect hawks, because in fact, the buoy was never designed for the early warning system. Again, back to our seismic sensor monitoring. From the seismic sensor monitoring, we got the record of the earthquake. Then the signals of the earthquake was processed automatically, immediately, less than 2 minutes, with our artificial intelligence in supercomputer, and it is processed by integrating 18,000 tsunami modeling. That's physical and mathematical modeling. Then we can provide maximum 5 minutes the information of tsunami early warning. Then automatically the early warning spread or delivered to the society through the interface institutions, that BNPB, the National Agency for Disaster Management, as well as the local agency for disaster management, automatically, because the authority to press the button is actually at the local agency for disaster management. It was by design and it was by law. So the local agency, once receive the information for tsunami potential, then they can decide whether they must evacuate their people or not necessary to evacuate, depend on the level of the warning. If only first level, so it means not always necessary to be evacuate the society. But if beyond that, the society must be evacuated and the local authority must press the button. Apart from the local agency and the national agency, the information for tsunami early warning is also spread automatically to various media, social media, television media, electronic media, and also to the Indonesian Army and Indonesian Police. Then we learn, it seems, or it is the fact, in the last earthquake, all the media collapsed except for the social media, the Twitter, Instagram, as well as the Facebook. In Palu case, we have the collapsed communication system because of the telephone system or BTS was collapsed and the electricity was also collapsed. But the one, again, which was quite powerful, actually the radio. The radio doesn't need electricity or also doesn't need the BTS. That's another lesson learned. Then, when we should finalize the early warning system, the early warning must be finalized after we have received the data from the coastline. We have installed tide gauges along the coastline, and the tide gauges will send the data when the height of the sea water or the height of the tsunami has been minimized, has been back close to the normal. Then we finalize the early warning. So if we have buoy will be used for checking or for reconfirmation whether the tsunami has really arrived. Not for early warning, but for checking, for reconfirmation whether the tsunami has hit the buoy. That means, oh, it is really tsunami. Because our early warning can be not really tsunami. It is mathematically tsunami, modeling tsunami. So it can be wrong. It can be no tsunami. In order to make sure that the tsunami really occur, we can have buoy, we can have tide gauge to check, to reconfirm that tsunami really occurred, then also to reconfirm that tsunami has finished, has completed. Then we can finalize the warning system, because the warning system must be finalized. Why warning system must be finalized? It must be done in order to let the SAR, the police, the people to help the victims. Without finalization of the warning, no one will enter the area. So that is the existing system. And this must be improved. Learning from the lesson of Palu and Sunda Straits, this system must be improved because tsunami come much, much faster. And the communication system was also collapsed. Next, please. As I mentioned, that our existing warning system is the mathematical and physical modeling system. So it means it can be wrong, it can be correct. Among 25 warning, no, actually 23, among 24 warnings, we have managed to have the correct warning is, 15 or 16. Yeah. So again, because it is not the late warning system, but it is early warning system by mathematical modeling, so it can be wrong. And the people has been getting used for the recent warning, which was not the right warning. No one complained. No one complained. Even before warning, everyone on the coastline have evacuated themselves. So it means for us now, there is no regret if the warning is not the right warning. For them, safety is much, much more important rather than the accuracy. This is the next lesson. Safety is much, much more important rather than the accuracy. So next slide, please. Again, lesson learned. Here, we can see that our challenge first in the upper stream, which must be able to provide speed or rapid warning system. It means we must improve our existing system, especially the density of the networks of earthquake sensors. Our earthquake sensors was only 174 sensors, our existing system. Now we are moving for the modernization. we will add about 400 sensors in 2 years. So the modernization, thank you very much. The modernization now is ongoing to add about 400 sensors in 2 years in order to provide denser network. Then hopefully it can be faster in providing the information. Apart from that, we also now put 100 sensors of earthquake early warning. Now we are in the process of installing the earthquake early warning, which can provide 15 up to 30 seconds of warning before the secondary wave of the earthquake. So we use, thank you very much. We use the primary wave as the early warning. So we have the time lag of 15 up to 30 seconds. Hopefully, by having earthquake early warning, it can help us to speed off the tsunami early warning. That's the idea. However, again, as I mentioned in the remarks, the challenge is not only about the science and technological driven, but also the social-cultural driven. When we have the tsunami last time, to be honest, there is no proper regulation for all stakeholders to work together to tackle the early warning of tsunami. The last regulation was managed by the coordinating minister for social welfare, but that regulation has been abandoned due to the coordinating minister institution has also been abandoned. So that means since 2000, I don't know when it was abandoned, 2012 or 2014, we have no minister dealing with that. So no regulation at all. So everyone working in the tsunami early warning is not compulsory duty. They work on that is due to the voluntary one. So for instance, if the local government doesn't work when we give the warning, when we send the warning, and then no one in the local government to press the button, they cannot be blamed. No penalty for them because we have no regulation for that. So that's why when we have Lombok tsunami, it was also tsunami but small. Lombok tsunami, Palu tsunami, no one pressed the button. No one ready there. And we as the authority, we as the National Agency for Tsunami Early Warning, we have no authority at all to ask the local agency to press the button. So this is the cultural challenge. So that's why now we are in the process of finalizing the presidential decree which gave strong regulation for every agency to compulsory participate, to compulsory work on early warning system, because it is impossible only our agency have responsibility and authority to do that. It is impossible to control very large Indonesian people, very large region, only by our agency. It must be cooperation among agency. And now, soon, the president has very strong concern. The president himself push every agency to cooperate together to sustain the early warning system. And The presidential decree now is ready. Hopefully in a few weeks, hopefully it can be signed by the president. So by having that a presidential decree, now every agency which is involved can be work on duty for that early warning system. And the last challenge is again about the social, cultural situation. It must be work very well. We must keep continuing to have literacy, community education, public education, community outreach, despite of the changing of the regime. The changing of the regime, we must, despite of that, we must maintain the continuity. So for that, we must have a more permanent regulation to make the local government to keep that. So hopefully with the presidential decree, the literacy issue can also be solved. Sustainability can also be maintained for that. And the last again, we must have much more training, drill and exercise. Next please. Next. This also the multi-hazard is the issue. So that's why now we add additional instrument. Next please. Multi-hazard, the gap of adaptation is also the issue, and I have mentioned by education, literacy, the sustainability of the policy is also prepared now to solve that issue gap of adaptation between the resiliency and the phenomena which increase sharply. Next please. Next, again, the education is still ongoing and must be further improved. And next, as I mentioned before, the modernization also involves the earthquake early warning and involves the additional 400 of sensors in order to provide early warning in 2 minutes or less. Next, please. And again, we add more than 400 sensors now is installed in 2 years. Next, so that's it was the picture of the sensors. We also add to improve the gauge, the tide gauge network. The tide gauge network is also improved in order to provide rapid information. Next, please. And BPPT, that's the Agency for Technology Assessment and Development, is also supported by the government to provide ocean bottom unit for tsunami detection. So it is not the buoy anymore. Now we move to the ocean bottom unit for tsunami detection, which will be supported by smart cable. Thank you for the colleague from US, also from other country which work together with us. Laura, perhaps you also will be involved to support this ocean bottom unit for tsunami detection. So from this system, we can also have immediate record not only for the tectonic tsunami, but also for the non-tectonic tsunami, because it's record the water pressure, whatever the resource of the tsunami, but the water pressure can be recorded immediately, and the data can be transmitted immediately through the smart cable. Next, please. And we also have the several innovation, that's 4.0 innovation, mostly related to the mobile apps for the delivering the early warning. Before, the early warning was delivered through the machine to machine from our agency to the local agency. But now we have a mobile phone delivery from our agency to anyone who has installed the apps from our warning system. So thank you very much for that. Because we learn when we only rely on the local agency, we could not guarantee there will be 24-hour readiness there. So if from mobile phone, it can be everyone notice that by considering that the telecommunication will not be collapsed. So our government now is also in the process of improving our telecommunication by relying on the satellite, not only on the BTS as the backup or redundancy system. Next, that's the SOP. Now we have improved our SOP. Additional SOP is prepared for non-tectonic tsunami. So in this SOP, we can also have a system to address the non-tectonic, because the non-tectonic may also, no earthquake occur in the warning system. So that's why SOP must be adjusted by considering no earthquake. Only rely on our tsunami smart cable, our OBU, ocean bottom unit, as well as our tsunami radar. We have started to install tsunami radar in Sunda Strait, and soon that will be in the south of Java Island, Central Java Island. And we have also continuously monitoring through the CCTV and also through tide gauge and through radar, through the buoy, which has been, that's now special for the Sunda Strait because it has that's Krakatau volcano. Close to the Krakatau volcano, BPPT installed the buoy Tsunami. This is the first buoy we have, especially for the Krakatau. That's buoy Merah Putih. Next, please. And we have INASEIS, that's Indonesia Seismic Information System, that has been developed soon after Sunda Strait tsunami. From INASEIS, or Seismic Information System, we can detect the seismicity due to the volcanic eruption. Before, our sensor was only designed for tectonic seismicity, so it could not detect a weak seismicity from the volcanic. Now we have volcanic seismicity information, which is integrated in the Indonesian Seismic Information System. Next, please. This is the mobile apps that I mentioned before, that WRS BMKG for the national. So the mobile apps is prepared not only for Indonesian, but also for ASEAN, as well as for Indian Ocean. So anyone who has not yet installed this, please start to install this system. Next, please. So again, the social cultural, as I mentioned before, we must solve the gap of that between the capacity and the sharp increment of disaster through the proper literacy and public education, which is supported by the presidential decree as well as by the local policy. Next. And finally, I should conclude, all of what we have done, all of the modernization may not be successfully implemented without the socio-cultural innovation. So actually this is the key. This is the key to make our modernization can work properly. that the first is the sustainability of education and empowerment of the local society and local government, and then media engagement and mitigation. To be frankly, the hardest part after tsunami, Palu and Sunda, the hardest part for us is not about the warning system. The hardest part is the mitigation of hoax. Hoax, the wrong information always spread. So now we have improved our communication system in order to tackle hoax. And again, local wisdom and local technology local wisdom must be integrated into our technology innovation. As I mentioned before, we consider our local wisdom that the earthquake itself as the early warning, not only the early warning through the machine or siren. And again, policy, governance, and legal aspect must be improved through, in this case, through new presidential decree for Indonesian tsunami early warning system. And we must have pentahelix synergy, that cooperation between the government, the experts. Experts is very, very much important for us. Our system is advised by the experts from, not only from BMKG, but also from Indonesia and from overseas. So cooperation between the government, the expert, our university, then the local people, as well as the media, and also the business sector must be invited in the cooperation. Up to now, it is still challenging. Very limited business partner is willing to work together in this particular problem. They only willing to work after the disaster. Now we are trying to invite them to work together before the disaster. That's all from us, and I should apologize if any words from me which is not convenient for any one of you. And again, thank you very much. This system could not be developed, could not be modernized without the support from all of you, from all stakeholders here. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati for inspiring keynote speech. I would like to invite Professor Dwi Korita Karnawati to stay on the podium to give a token of appreciation. Now we are heading to the last agenda. Professor Dwi Korita would like to give a token of appreciation for the collaboration. First, we would like to invite the Symposium Coordinating Agency to the stage. Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs, Mr. Rahmat Hidayat.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Andre Omer Siragar.
UNESCO Office Jakarta, Professor Syahbaz Khan.
UNESCO IOC, Dr. Torkild Arup.
IORA, Dr. Gatot Hari Gunawan.
UNDRR, Mrs. Iria Tauzon Kale.
UNDP, Mrs. Sophie Kamkadze.
GIZ, Dr. Thomas Krimmel.
Representative of JICA, Mr. Yamanaka Shinichi.
And IATSI, Dr. Gegar Prasetya.
We announce once again, we would like to invite Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs, Mr. Rahman Hidayat.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Andre Omer Siregar.
UNESCO Office Jakarta, Professor Syahbaz Khan.
UNESCO IOC, Dr. Torkild Arup.
IORA, Dr. Gatot Hari Gunawan.
UNDRR, Mrs. Iria Tauzon Kale.
UNDP, Mrs. Sophie Kamkat,
GIZ Dr. Thomas Krimal,
representative of JICA, Mr. Yamanaka Shinichi,
and IATSI Dr. Gegar Prasetya. After this, for all representative, please remain on the stage to a group photo.
Gandung, monitor Mas Gandung. Mas Gandung.
Thank you to Professor Dwi Korita and all the representative. Ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded the opening session of the International Symposium on Lesson Learned of the 2018 Tsunamis in Palu and Sunda Strait. We thank you for your kind attention.
We would like to announce for the field trip. The registration will be tomorrow. There will be IDR 150,000 rupiah for the field trip. We also have exhibition. First, the poster exhibition is on the right side of the podium, and the second one is the photo exhibition is on the left side of the podium. And exhibition booth of Tsunami Education in downstairs.
Also, we kindly remind you to register at registration desk downstairs. We will now have 30 minutes of coffee break. The coffee break is served in the lobby outside this auditorium and downstairs, where we have the exhibition booth. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Cek. Telepon. Telepon. HP kamu. Ini nanti yang saya taruh atas 456 ya. 456 ya. 456. Iya, 456. Iya, 22 21 20
Coba di situ terakhir kan 22. Kalau 456 berarti 20 21 22 ya.
Cek dulu ya.
Gimana, Pak?
Ini mau saya bawa ke atas kamu.
456.
Ini mau saya ke atas.
Kita kan punya mic 6, 456 berarti kalau di sana di atas itu 20 21 22 kan? Betul, Pak, betul. Gitu. Jadi samain lagi deh itu nomornya, lu kasih nomor gitu lagi.
Enam. Cek lu 6. 5. 4. Cek lu. Cek 1. Din 1. Cek lu 1. Lu cek 1. Lu cek lu 1. Lu cek lu 1. Sip. Cek lu sip. Cek lu sik lu 5. Cek lu 5. Lu cek lu sip. Cek 1. 6. Cek lu. Cek 1. Cek 1. Cek sound 1. Lu cek 1. Cek 1. Cek lu 1. Lu 1. Lu cek 1. Lu naik lagi. Cek 1. Lu sip. Cek 1. Low 1. Kurang naik. Cek 1. Low. Cek low 1. Cek low 1. Low.
Sama ini yang tadi yang pertama aja mas.
Cek low. Low 1. Oke.
Udah pak.
Samain aja yang nomor 18 sama ini yang 456. Cek 1 low.
Berarti 1 jam ya? Berarti 1 jam ya? Kan ini mulainya 1 jam. Ini mulainya jam 11 nih, jam 11 lewat.
Low 1. Low. Low. Nggih.
Sekarang gini, ini jangan kayak gini lagi lah. Pusing siapa yang ngasih nomor sih? Ini nomor 2, ini nomor 2, ini nomor 19.
Ini 18, Pak.
suppose I sit here.
Yeah, you can sit there.
Replace.
And then
With the new one.
Yes.
may I know you have give this presentation?
Yes. I have
This.
yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. This.
Aku coba mau ngejar si ini udah belum sih si Philip Liu?
Udah. Pak Gegar, presenter Bapak yang manggil atau mau langsung duduk aja? I will call ya. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Oh no. Iya, bener Pak. Telepon lagi, yang dulu.
Boleh dibawa untungnya gitu.
Iya. Kepada Bapak dan Ibu, kami mohon dapat kembali ke ruangan pertemuan ini karena kita akan melanjutkan sesi berikutnya. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue our next agenda. So please have a seat.
Mesa? Meja?
Meja, table.
Meja.
Have you speak bahasa
Sedikit bahasa.
sedikit bahasa?
But meja
Meja.
in Espanol
Yeah.
is meja.
Meja.
It's spelled the same.
Spell the same.
M-E-J. Yeah.
So J is hard.
Yeah, in Spanish it's he. So it's meja.
Meja.
Meja. Yeah, meja. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm learning Spanish at the same time.
But you're Australian, right?
Yeah.
And you learn Spanish also.
Yeah. And it keeps confusing me because there's some words that are the same like that in Spanish. But I don't know why though, because Dutch is different to Spanish.
Yes, different. Dutch, Germany also different.
But I thought the Indonesian language would have more Dutch words than Spanish words. Okay, right. So the last.
Hati gua. Oh iya. Iya, ini kan yang BMKG. Ini kayak,
So the keynote speech that we just had, the keynote speech
Keynote speech?
that we just had before.
Oh, Puji Gurita?
Yeah, which one? That's not on here. Is it?
Already here.
So, Greg, I think it will be better if I have your email. So, send me your email. Have you WhatsApp number?
Selamat pagi, selamat siang Bapak Ibu sekalian. Session ini akan segera kami mulai mengingat waktu yang sudah molor. Kami berharap Bapak-Bapak Ibu yang masih di luar untuk segera masuk ke ruangan karena session akan segera dimulai. Untuk session ini ada 3 pembicara yang akan berbicara pada session pertama ini, yaitu Profesor Ahmad Yalciner dari Middle East Technical University, Department of Civil Engineering, Ocean Engineering Research Center Ankara di Turki, dengan judul Reflection from the Experience Gained in UNESCO ITST Post Tsunami Field Survey. Kemudian ada Profesor Philip Liu dari National University of Singapore mengenai coastal landslide and tsunami in Palu Bay during 2018 Sulawesi earthquake. Yang kemudian yang terakhir di sesi ini adalah Profesor Herman Street dari Georgia Tech Institute of Technology mengenai di 2018 anak Krakatau tsunami near South Field survey on island in the Sunda Strait. So ladies and gentlemen, we will start the session now. I would like to invite the first speaker for this session is Professor Ahmad Yalciner. Please come and sit with me first. A brief description of Professor Ahmad Yalciner. Professor Ahmad Yalciner is well known on the tsunami science and research from back in 1990s, and we are lucky that we have you here. Your title of presentation is Reflection from the Experience Gained in UNESCO ITSC Post-Tsunami Field Survey for Palu, and it will be 15 minutes. Yes, and time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yagar. Just in the beginning, before starting my presentation, we, on behalf of all authors of this presentation, we express our condolences to the victims of the 2018 tsunami events in Indonesia and all other victims from other natural hazards. My presentation is on the reflections from our experience gained from our survey held 7 to 11 November 2018. As you see from the list of the authors and the supporting organizations, the group is very large from different expertise, from different countries, mainly from Indonesia, from Europe, and other countries, and scientists and operational responsible experts. Next slide, please. In our survey, next one, our methodology was to gather existing maps, charts, tidal records, and measure the tsunami parameters in the at site, pictures, audiovisual recordings for the archives, and interview with eyewitnesses, data collection on the tsunami parameters at the land sites. And we followed the post-tsunami survey guide, second edition of UNESCO IOC. Next one. Majority of the researchers visited all the areas in Palu. My presentation is focused on the Palu only, Palu area. But when we go there, before us there were other surveys held. We learned the visited sites of the previous surveys, and we tried to go to the other sites to collect information at earliest, because during time some of the traces would be lost. Continue, next slide. Field measurements covered to the northernmost at east coast and northernmost at the west coast in Palu Bay. Next one. I summarize some of our findings from some of our measurement locations. The one on the northern part, the eastern coast. At the northern part, we went to the near the epicenter location, and there was no major damage. Only there was eyewitness information and water motion, mainly come from the tidal change. Next one. Labuan is another one. This photo is one of the interesting findings in our survey. Shows the photo 2 hours before the event and 2 months, almost 1.5 months after the event, the subsidence of the coastal area and the remained tree. And the photo left was 2 hours before the landslide, before the event and the landslide. Next one. Wani was the famous location because the video showed the behavior of the wave at this location, and simply the results are arrival time is 3 minutes 40 seconds after the earthquake, and the flow depth at site was about 70 centimeters and run up 4.8 meters. Next one. In Wani, at Wani, there are eyewitness information, recedence of the wave around 3 meters, and the advancing wave comes after. Other two people also confirmed that the first motion of the wave was negative wave. Waves came to Wani from two different directions, from east and west direction. And time interval between the waves was very fast in order of the seconds. And in Tonge, the high impact nearby a river mouth, coastal collapse area, and according to eyewitness reports, there were two waves directions from eastern and western. From Pantoloan site. Run-up height 4 meter, flow depth was 1.8 meter. And the photo shows the disappeared mooring structure and remaining ship at Tonge region. Next one. Pantoloan is the location where the tide gauge record available, and the wave direction was reported from northern side, run-up height 2.7 meter, and inundation distance 73 meters. Flow depth half meter inside a small one-story building. It was from the eyewitnesses. However, we could not find the traces because it was cleaned after the event before our arrival. Next one. At Bamba, the first wave arrived on the coast 2-3 minutes after the earthquake, and there were 3 waves observed. There was a statue at this location with a height of 2 meters, and the water flowed over this statue with a flow depth 1.3 meters. Tanjung Karang, the field observations showed that is at the northernmost point of the western Palu coast. Eyewitnesses reported no tsunami, no significant wave motion. There was wave motion, but not so significant. And run-up height was very small at this location, but there were 49 meters inundation because the slope is very mild at this location. Next one, please. In Donggala, there was another coastal collapse, resulted in high damage and the victims also. Eyewitnesses tells that 31 houses located along the shore at this location, and all of them disappeared, went down to the sea with a run-up height 1.7 meter, inundation distance 179 meters. Next one. Here is the Donggala. The collapse, coastal collapse happened at the port is also clear from the available satellite images for before and after. We performed, actually, Dr. Semeyde Hüsrin and Rahman Hidayat spent efforts and time, and they could obtain the sonar measurements. Next one. And this was one of another highlight of our study, that during the study, bathymetric measurements could be obtained at the critical location, the coastal collapse location. Next one. And another coastal collapse location is the Lolipesua, middle part of the western coast. There was run-up height, flow depth 1 meter, run-up height 4.7 meters. And also the GPS tracking shows the before and after the location of the coastline and the wave direction to the survey point. Next one, please. Tamungu, another point that coastal collapse occurred, and we also obtained the GPS tracking during survey, and highly damaged area. Run-up height seen as 6.2 meter, and the inundation distance 75 meters. Next one. Vatusampu is the location near the naval base. Run-up height reached 6.3 meters, inundation distance 74 meters, and flow depth 2.2 meter. And the photographs show the coastal collapse and the coastal morphology after the collapse. Next one. Western coast of Palu Bay, that is Benteng. It is also another highly impacted area. Large coastal sector collapsed into the sea with a run-up height 9.1 meters. And first negative wave was observed, and totally 3 waves arrived to coast, and the second one was the largest. The photograph shows also before and after coastline locations. Next one, please. Here is our findings, summary of our findings. The run-up distributions at eastern and western coast of the Palu Bay. As you see that run-up exceeds 6 meters, or at some locations more than 6 meters, east and west coast of Palu Bay. Next one is the distribution of the inundation heights at the east and west coast of Palu Bay. And next one, please. This is the locations of the observed coastal lake landslides. There are different landslides occurred near the coast according to our survey. However, there were more detailed surveys. We are going to learn those results in the coming presentations. Next one, please. I would like to emphasize another important achievement in our survey. That is the survey participants not only presented at site, some of them also contributed to the survey remotely from different continents, or in Indonesia, or from different countries. There was the field report tool developed by the European Commission Joint Research Center. Dr. Alessandro Annunziato shared this tool to the survey members, and during the survey, there were 2 teams in the survey team. Some days we worked, one team worked another coast, another team worked another coast, but there were very close coordination between the survey teams, and the comments from the non-participated survey team members by mobile application could make the survey much more efficient, and we could obtain better results, and we could discuss some uncertain results and come to the certain results for the survey outputs. Next one. As the general discussion, when we look at the technical the perspective, as you know that the generation mechanism of the tsunami is not only due to the co-seismic deformation. There are other reasons, mainly coastal subsidence or landslides, subaerial or submarine landslides, and several collapses of coastal sectors and landslides were observed. Highly impacted locations, there are some focusing of the impact of tsunami at some locations. And there are similarities between the Izmit 1999 earthquake, Haiti 2010, and Palu 2018 events in terms of fault characteristics. That was a strike slip fault, but generated tsunami by means of the subsidence and landslides. And the wave period is short comparing to other destructive tsunamis. Next one, please. According to operational perspective, first of all, there are different dimensions of the tsunami, post-tsunami field surveys. They are the safety of the team, administration, technical issues, advisory or feedback, and governance and coordination, communication, data sharing, confidentiality, and the benefits of the newly developed computational tools, instruments, and documentation by the report after the event, and also scientific publications after scientific review. So we have followed all these steps by following the UNESCO International Tsunami Survey Team Post-Tsunami Survey Guide. So I would like to emphasize in my next slide the benefit, we can go to the next slide, the benefit of the ITST Post-Tsunami Survey Field Guide. Everything was written in the guide. We experienced during this survey that we should follow Tsunami National Contact, host country, coordination committee, and the others are written in the guide. We can go to the next one. And before the event and during the field survey and after the field survey, there are other steps mentioned in the survey guide. We can go to the next one. And those are summarized here. Communication with the host government and coordination committee, people interview with the people during the survey, keeping track of local contacts and obligations, and also exit briefing with the host country officials, coordination committee. We have performed all of those. And also I have to acknowledge numerous organizations from Indonesia, from European Commission, from the countries in Europe, and there are many organizations that supported this survey, and we have to acknowledge all those listed here. Next one, please. I also thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Professor Ahmed Yalciner, for your presentation. So I will keep a session of question for this, because your question may be answered by the next speaker, which is Professor Pilipiu. I would like to invite Professor Pilipiu from National University of Singapore to come to the stage with us. Due to the system which is not smoothly running from this, please feel free, Prof, to make presentation. Yes, you can. Yes, please. He's a bit blink here, or you can directly any place that you feel comfortable. That's fine. Okay, thank you. Yes, it's 50 minutes, Prof. Thank you.
Okay. This is okay. Let's get started. No, that's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Test.
Okay. I have all the microphone here. Can I have my presentation, please? Can I start? Okay. Well, before I get started, I'd just like to thank the organizer for the invitation to allow me to have this chance to share some of our experiences for this particular event. And on this, the first slides, I only list my name. It really doesn't mean that I'm the only one did all the work. Actually, there are quite a few staff members from the National University of Singapore participate in this event. So also some of quite a few our Indonesian colleagues were involved in the surveys I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please. I actually was involved in two different surveys. And the first survey, we came to Palu on October 25th with Professor Sinolakis and also Professor Fritz Herman, and also some of the students from USC, and of course our colleague from Indonesia. What we did during that trip basically is did some survey, which similar to what Professor Elsinder, whatever the name is, okay, did the survey to measure the inundation, maximum inundations, and also the inundation water depths along both East Coast and the West Coast. And also we had a chance actually to fly in a helicopter and did a aerial survey or visual. Basically, we didn't really do any real quantitative type of survey. And just make some observations and correlate with what we have seen on the ground. And so we have seen a lot of things similar to what the previous speaker has reported. And I will not elaborate any further, but let me go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. And this is a very quick summary on the survey results in terms of a maximum run-up. And you probably can see that my screen is flicking all the time. But anyway, there are a few data points there. Basically, what you need to focus at this moment are these color dots. These are the actual survey data and have been reported by Herman Fritz in the AGU meeting, I believe, and some other meetings. And there are other people's survey data also were put in there in the different colors. Ignore the black color, the many black dots. Those are the numerical simulated results. I will talk about that if we have time later on. The take-home message here, the only one important thing is that on both coasts of Palu Bay, they were affected by tsunami, and there are significant inundation occurring on both sides of the bay. But if you go outside of the bay, go to the north, and you will see very little signature trace of damages caused by the tsunami. By the way, during this event, of course, a lot of people lost their life, and there was a lot of property damages, but most of the damage were caused by earthquake and liquefactions. And the total damage related to tsunami itself perhaps is not as significant as others. And okay, so let's move on. And so obviously that based on the survey, we know that tsunami occurred and inundation occurred. And then of course there have been a lot of video tapes being reported and YouTube and so on and so forth. People recorded the real tsunami coming on shore and flooding the different locations, so on and so forth. So obviously, tsunami actually occurred. But if you consider the fact that this earthquake was reported as occurring in the so-called strike slip fault, and common sense tells us that if you have a strike slip fall, and it's unlikely for the magnitude of this magnitude, which is not very big, earthquake, big enough but not that big, to generate large tsunami in the typical way. So the question really is, what is the generation mechanism for this? And is there something we don't know about the tectonic plate motions? And the fact is that we really don't have a very good information on the fault line configuration or geometries underneath the bay. We have some idea, we do have a pretty good information on land, and, but we don't have a very clear knowledge on the fault mechanism, the fault plan configuration underneath the bay. And then, of course, then, based on the land survey, based on the observation we have made, it's quite clear, like the last report mentioned, that there are a lot of coastal type of coastal landslide occur, and the evidence is quite clear, and maybe there's also subsidence along the both coastline. So those are all possible sources for generate these kind of tsunami. So we would like to be able to perhaps do a little quantification, see whether we can quantify these mechanisms a little better. And so next slide, please. So we did a lot of little things, and I don't have time to go into detail. If you are interested in the detail, we can talk over the lunch or cover break or any time. And so one thing we did is to say that we use the seismic fault plan mechanisms reported by USGS, for example, and assuming certain simple fault line configuration going through the Palu Bay, and to find out what is the fault mechanism, plan mechanism. Then from that, you can calculate what is the initial seabed or seafloor displacement. Then use that again, you can calculate, use the shallow water wave equation, you can calculate the tsunami. All right, so that's based on USGS original report for the fault plan mechanism that actually turned out to be not very successful, just like what we thought. And for this strike slip type of fall mechanisms, the tsunami you can generate is very, very, well, relatively small in comparison with what we observed. So we thought maybe the fault plan, the fault mechanisms wasn't estimated correctly. So we use additional information, the satellite information, the INSAR information for the ground motions, and do the inverse using those data, and propose a different kind of fault line configuration. Now, though some of the fault lines are better constrained based on the knowledge, geological knowledge, some of them are pure gas, all right? So we propose several different kind of fault line configuration. Can I have the next slide, please? And I don't know whether you can see it very clearly here, but just take my words for it. And we use the INSAR ground displacement as the data, input data for the inverse. Then assuming different kind of fault line configurations and do the inversion, find out the fault mechanism. From there, you calculate the tsunami propagation in the bay. Then next slide, please. Now, again, it's very difficult to read, and let me just tell you that what happened is that using these kind of source model, and you calculate the wave propagation, tsunami propagation, then you calculate the run-up, high, so on and so forth, along the both coasts of the bay. Then you compare with the observed survey data. All these models significantly underestimate the run-up highs or the run-up, the inundation in the water depths. So the try using the tectonic plate mechanisms with the model we proposed didn't work that well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now maybe there's something else we should know better about the fault line configuration inside the bay that we don't know yet. Right. So we turn our attention to the landslide issues. And can I have the next slide, please? So that actually sort of motivated us to say, let's go there actually to do another survey, submarine bathymetry survey, to get some real data about the after earthquake and the tsunami the bathymetry data. Okay, so we went there in November on November 27th, and the survey actually lasted for more than a couple of weeks. 1 month after, yeah. So this is some of the picture. I cannot see very well over there. You can see that Gilgar was there, and they took a lead, gathered a team of people, and we ran the fishing boat, and with the equipment, so on and so forth, we did a survey. And so can I have the survey, actually, we were pretty ambitious originally. We're zigzagging across the bay, along the coastline, and zigzagging in the bay. But then we actually had some challenges with this particular survey. I will mention that later. The next slide, please. Now, it turns out, we know that before we went there, that there's an earlier survey after the earthquake and tsunami that was conducted by Indonesia Navy Center for Hydrology. What is that? Oceanography Center for Hydro-Oceanography. Okay, so I think it's a Navy-related organizations. They actually conducted this surveys few days after the earthquake, and 2 weeks after, sorry. And so they have a much better boat. It's not a fishing boat at all. And they also have used a multi-beam echo sounders and for the measurements. And basically, simply says that their resolution, horizontal resolution is about 10 meters, and the vertical resolutions a little bit worse, and it's talking about maybe 5 meters in the deep water regions. So, but their observations, I guess, surveys actually couldn't go into a very near shore area in the coastal, near the coastline. So in complementary to their survey, we decided and looking to do a more detailed, careful survey in the near shore area within the water depths of 100 meter and shallower. Okay, so next slide, please. So this is basically some information for our so-called shallow water surveys. And the horizontal resolution is much finer, 0.8 meters, all right? And of course, we still cannot, because the type of boat we use cannot go to the really shoreline, so it still has some distance in the very shallow water region. So basically, in the diagram, you can say that the picture there is the region that our data, the shallow water wave data, is really working, have high resolutions. Okay, so next slide, please. So later, after we've done the surveys and working with the Navy and oceanography centers, we combine these two sets of data together, right? And so this is the product of the bathymetry data, so-called the post-earthquake and tsunami bathymetry data. And now, next slide, please. And this is just another way to show it is demonstrating the slope, the steepness of the bathymetries in this bay, and on both sides the bank is really steep, right? The deepest waters in the middle of the channel can go to the 700 meter to 800 meter. I think most deepest one is around 850 meters near the entrance of the bay. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so based on these data, just these data, and there are very clear, strong evidence that or signatures of the landslide near shore, right? And so this is just one example here at the city, small village called Mura, and so everybody has taken these pictures. There's a clear coastal slides, and a lot of building fall into the waters, and the structure disappears. And so the image there, you can see the reddish image is really based on the bathymetry data. You can see the signature of coastal landslides. And I will show you another one, please. The next one. Okay, so this is the one is on the east coast of the bay, very near Palu City. And there are two clear signatures of the coastal landslides. And I don't know whether you can click again. They should give you some dimension. Can you? No. Okay. Never mind. Okay. So those are just the two typical coastal landslide signatures based on the data, survey data, and there are many, many of them, other ones. But to quantify them, and we have to say how big are these landslides, what's the dimension, what's the sizes, and so on and so forth. Then we start to say, what are the pre-so-called tsunami and earthquake data? And turn out that that's a real challenge, all right? So according to the published data, and we have 2015 and 2014 published bathymetry data for Palu Bay. And if you compare two of them, there are striking differences between these two sets of data. And it's hard to believe that in 1 year, Palu Bay have gone through such changes, right? And so there are some clear indication that, for example, in 2015, near the entrance of a bay, they seem to have a ridge of some sort, a barrier of some sort. There is one area that water is very, very, very shallow. And we're sort of making some guesses is because the resolution of certain data is so bad that maybe just one bad data people extrapolate or interpret it in such a way that water becomes very, very shallow near the entrance. So we literally abandoned the 2015 data set and used the 2014 data. Then luckily also discovered another set of data which was surveyed in 2017. That survey didn't cover the entire bay, only a limited area, but the resolution is very, very good. All right, very, very good. So we use a combination of 2017 and 2014 data as a base, as the pre-tsunami and earthquake bathymetry data. Then we'll compare the pre and the post-tsunami data, do the best we can to estimate the dimension, the size of these coastal landslides. That's what we did. Okay. So without going into detail, there's lots and lots of work involving to get these kind of numbers. Even they are not 100% accurate, but we did the best we can. And Pablo, my postdoc here, spent a lot of time to look into this problem. And if you have any question about how we did it, he's in the audience. Can you stand up, please? Right. And he can answer all the tough questions. All right, can you have the next slide, please? All right, so, okay, this is what I really just said about the pre and the post-tsunami data, bathymetry data. And the picture here showing you that these are the, I guess, 12 or 13 different coastal landslides were identified by going through these comparisons, right? That location, some of the locations probably have been identified based on the field survey. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so again, these are previously I have already shown you the data. When you look at the post-survey data, you see the signatures. Here is simply quantified a little bit more clearly. It's the same location, and simply look at the dimensions and all that is listed over there. And again, let's move on. I've been running out of time. This is again the different locations. This is on the East Coast of the bay and near Pantalong and Wani area, right? And then apparently there's two coastal landslides, and it happened, probably not surprising to everybody, that these local landslides all occur in the vicinity of a river mouth, right? So usually occur in the delta, all right, a river delta region, because they have very steep slope on the bank. So anybody who is geologist, you know better than I do that perhaps the seabed is not that stable. Right? Okay, so let's move on. All right, so again, I don't expect you to see it, but I just want to say it. By going through this laborious work, you can identify all these different landslides using some consistent way of estimating the dimension of these slides, then we can give you some parameters of each slide, the length, the width, total volume, so on and so forth. Right? The table is simply trying to illustrate that. The one take-home message is that all these coastal landslides, the dimension is not that big. All right? The size, the typical size of these landslides horizontally is in terms of 5 kilometers, order magnitudely. It's not 20 kilometers. All right? And so that's important to sort of recognize that it's not very large landslide, and therefore might not generate very long wave. All right? Okay, let's move on. Now, so eventually we'd like to relate this landslide, different kind of landslide, to tsunami. Now, if they actually occur based on the evidence from the land, based on the survey data, all these landslides actually occur. Whether the size or the dimension or volume are precisely correct, we're not 100% sure. But if they actually occur, that means that they disturb the water in the bay. That means that some kind of water wave were generated. So then the question is that what kind of water wave you generate? What kind of tsunami you generate? Are they corresponding to what people observe, right? On the video or in the pendulum, there's a wave gauge there in the harbor. And do they match up with each other, right? So you need to make an effort then translating the size of the landslide to the generation of a tsunami. That's a challenge because we don't know exactly what is the speed of these landslides. Although we can estimate the volume, we probably can guesstimate the material, what kind of a sediment or soil we're talking about, but we don't know exactly when did they occur, right after the shaking, or they have some time lag, or how do they really slide down into the slope? Is it rotating slope or other different kind of slides, right? So these are all uncertainties, but you do the best you can trying to do estimation. Now, fortunately, we actually have some kind of experiences from the theoretical point of view. You say that doesn't mean too much theoretically point of view. We can actually take the volume of the slides with estimating the slope of the slides on. We can sort of using some simple theory to estimate what kind of tsunami initial surface profile should look like, right? And a couple of papers have been published in that field. So just take my words for granted, and we did that. For each landslide, we can estimate what is the initial surface looks like corresponding to the landslide, and when this is going to occur. And so we did that, and that's the table listing all the characteristics of the initial landslide generated tsunami looks like in terms of the wavelengths, in terms of wave height, and it can even tell you roughly the time lag between, say, the initiation of landslide to the time when we estimate these kind of waveform actually is established, right? Okay, so use that. Then we run the so-called shallow water wave equation. You can use a different kind of model to do that using these information as the initial condition. Right? So there's many of the landslide generated tsunami in that bay, and you run this model. And next slide, please. And so unfortunately, this is supposed to be a video, and they cannot run it, right? So you miss some good videos. Let's just go to the next slide, because I have a snapshot. Next slide, please. Yeah. So you let this landslide generate wave goes, right, from the different location, and they start to propagate away from the source region, and they are all propagating in the same bay, so they start to interact with each other, overlapping with each other, superimpose on each other. So these are the snapshots at a different time, and then they eventually will sort of accumulate into certain waveform and approaching Palu City on the southern side of the bay, all right? And the video can show you a little much better. So that's what we did. And the next slide, please. Then we'll say how good is it, right? And using this kind of framework, and we estimate the coastal landslide. From that, we estimate the initial tsunami waves. Then we propagate these initial conditions into the bay, and then they reach a different location. And so we try to compare the numerical results with the known data. There's not much of known data. And Pantalone Harbor has a wave gauge, there. But whether you know it or not, the wave gauge, the tidal gauge data has been averaged over 30 seconds, right? And but every minute they only report one data point. So they average over 30 seconds. Every minute you're supposed to have 2 data points, but they only report 1 data point. So any wave perturbation, disturbance shorter than 30 seconds or 1 minute is not going to be resolved by the data reported by that tidal gauge. It's not their fault because they are interested in tides. They are not interested in anything shorter than tide, right? So 30 seconds or 1 minute averaging is reasonable to report a tidal fluctuation. That serves the purpose. But when you have a landslide generated wave, the wave period is much shorter, right? Much shorter, especially in the near field when they have a local disturbance. The fluctuation has a much shorter period, so that will not be captured by the Pantalone data. Now, have been some efforts, published paper, people use the videotape, analyzing the videotape, and then back calculate what is the wave shape and wave period, so on and so forth. But the uncertainty is pretty large there as well. And, but give you some general idea. Now, how do we compare with the data? Not very well. And you can see the earthquake, the landslide generated tsunami, and the wave period tend to be much shorter than what has been observed even by the videotape, right? And can I have the next landslide that will show you even better, I think. Right, you can see. I don't want to explain that, but if we do the 30-second time averaging of our numerical results, you can actually see some kind of long wave propagation inside the bay, which is captured by this kind of wave. Now, my time is running out, and let me see what I have next slide. Can I have the next slide? Okay. So general quick conclusion, and. I didn't show you the detail of the effort we made in terms of trying to estimate what is the tectonic plate generated tsunami in this bay situation. But up to this point, I think the biggest uncertainty or unknown is as far as the tectonic plate motion is concerned, is a fault line. Okay, it's a fault line configuration or geology of a fault line underneath the bay, right? There's a huge uncertainty in there. Now, we were 100% sure there's a lot of coastal landslide, and within the water depth of 100 to 200 meters, and we're sure that they generate wave because that can be seen in the video tapes people observe from the different locations, and but they do not add up. Right, to these very, very relatively long wave, a couple of minutes type of long wave being observed near the Palu city, for example. Right? And so something else is perhaps happening. Okay. So we did some kind of hypothetical modeling. What we did was, I don't know whether this is on. There's no video anyway. Because there have been several videotape being discovered, analyzed, then they can tell you, they can estimate what is the time history of a free surface elevation at several different locations, right, along the coast. Then we say, why don't we use those information as the source, as the input data, and do an inversion, right, to figure out what is the necessary sources to generate those videotape data. Assuming videotape data are perfect, right? And then we did that. Then what we did was that we say the source region, the location of these sources actually is more or less corresponding to the landslide. Right? Now, whether that's true or not is questionable. And we also allow the timing of these sources, in other words, the landslide or generation, the tsunami occurrence time will be different at the different locations. So that gives you another degree of freedom. And so then we can do the inverse and find out what is the source region parameters. Then we do the forward calculation, right? Then of course, then you compare with the videotape data will be perfect, right? Because you use that as the input, you do the inversion to the source, for the source, and then you do the forward calculation, it's perfect, right? Yeah, if you're not, it's not perfect match, that means that your inversion is wrong, right? You didn't do something correctly. But what's amazing thing is that this is the next slide. Right? Then if you compare that results for the inundation depths, right? Inundation depth along the coast, compared with the field observation, they looks very good, right? They looks very good. Now you say, well, did I solve the problem? Yes, no, maybe. I think that the fact is that there's so many free parameters you can play with, right? And although that gives you some indication, there is something happening in the deeper part of the bay, right? And with a scale perhaps different, much bigger than the coastal landslide scale. And also they might occur at a different time. It's not, in other words, not all the slide occur instantaneously after the earthquake, right? All these need to be considered in order to produce these results, right? Now, even if you say, okay, well, accept all those source parameters, then the question is, how do you relate to the physical or geological explanation? What is the real mechanism to generate that kind of source function is still an open question, right? I think my time is up, and if I can, maybe I have, oh no, okay, that's fine. One more slide, I think I have one more slide. Yeah, so what we have been trying to do, although it's really not my expertise here, is to look in the survey data, bathymetry data in the deeper part of the bay, and trying to see whether we can back out the fall line configuration. Now that totally depending on our colleagues, Indonesian colleagues who are geologists, geophysicists, and to see whether can use the survey data to back out the information of the fall line configuration. From there, perhaps we'll give you some much better understanding whether there's a much larger scale deformation, seafloor deformation in the bay, in the bay. That will explain some of the source parameters variations. So we simply use a mathematical inversion to find that kind of answer. Okay, so I should stop right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Liu, for your time. Very interesting talk, so it's very hard to stop. But anyway, after this, we will have a session for the Sunda Strait. But before the Sunda Strait we started, I would like to have like 1 or 2 short questions to Professor Ahmed and Professor Liu, because we will concluding the first session for Palu this morning. Any question? Yes, one from Palu. I'd like to have the native person that will ask. Please, Pak. And second, Mr. Ali. Okay.
Thank you very much for the time. According to presentation that the tsunami occurred due to the landslide. My question is, I want to know about the process of the landslide, because during the earthquake, because I feel the earthquake, before the main shock, we have 2 small earthquake at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And then after the main shock, we still have 2 shock, about 6.5, 3.5. So I want to know if the landslide occurred in similar time or different time. And it is possible also to understand the process of landslide because we can identify the potential landslide in the future. So because after the earthquake, I asked some people in the West Bank and in the west of the bay and in the east of the bay, they see bubble before there is a tsunami. So it means the process of landslide occurred not instantly after the earthquake. They have some process of the landslide. And then also, we don't know if the landslide occurred at the same time or different time. And if we can know the process of the landslide, I think we can identify the potential landslide that can make a tsunami. Thank you very much.
Okay. Please, the question is actually very long, but basically most of the people look at bubbles before the tsunami occurs, and I think the important question is whether the landslide is occur at the same time or not, because before the big earthquake happened, there is small earthquake that happened at 4 o'clock, so there is a pre-shock before the main shock. So any, Prof. Ahmed?
Maybe some short information from my experience. The similar findings happened before 1999 Izmit earthquake in Turkey. There were bubbles 3 days before the earthquake. People observed some abnormal waves, and the coffee garden near the shore invaded by the wave. That was a precursor of the small. That was the reason of the reason was the small landslides that happened with the earthquake. That is one of the experience I know. For Palu, you mentioned that there were 2 pre-earthquakes, and also during the earthquake. It is not easy to explain all the landslides happened at the same time, but because of the, as I understand from Philip Liu's presentation, according to in order to explain the wave motion, we should consider that landslides happened in a short time altogether. I can consider like that, but Philip can explain more.
So if you treat each landslide individually, and these dimension of these landslide vary from say kilometer to 5 kilometer, that sort of a size. And so the wave generated by that kind of landslide, the wavelength, roughly speaking, is about the same length scale, let's say, or maybe half of that. And then you can back calculate what is the wave periods corresponding to that kind of a wavelength. And it certainly is not going to be a couple minutes or more than what people observe in the Palu City regions, for example. And so individually, each landslide cannot account for that kind of wave shape, right? So what the experiments at the very end of my presentation say, we use the videotape as an input to inverse the source region. What that really did was to actually make these landslides occur at a different time. So basically, you can imagine that you have a seafloor which is vibrating, right, in certain way, and not really periodically, but it's just having the motion occurring at a different time. And consequently, you generate much longer wave, right? And so it's not individual wave. If they occur all at the same time, you're not going to have that process involved. So that could mean that actually the landslide occur at a different time, at a different location, or different magnitude, or it could mean that there is something else is happening in the much larger scale underneath the basin, still due to the tectonic mechanisms. right? And so that all depends on what is the fall configurations.
Thank you. I hope this explained. You can have some more discussion of this, please, Mr. Ali. Short question.
Thank you very much. I think we're really kind of getting into very important questions about landslide, and now we're against the seismologists. We start believing the landslide is the one we can talk about it as generating tsunami. One question from Professor Ahmed: have you done any correlation between the location of the kind of bathymetry and runoff? Is there any kind of correlation between these two events? Do we have this kind of high resolution bathymetry which can tell us? Is that kind of any work done on that in that respect? You can correlate. Have you done any correlation between locations of the landslide and the runoff?
Oh, yeah. So,
or inundations?
Yeah. Correlation between the landslide and the runoff.
I think you performed the simulation to explain the landslide-generated tsunami and correlation between the runoff measurement and the model results.
No, to the extent that we did it is what I show you, that we use these different coastal landslide as the sources, then generate a tsunami, corresponding tsunami, then look at a landslide, the runoff or the inundation. And
that's what I'm referring to, because you did some analysis, you looked at different locations and you've got different heights. My question is any kind of a statistical analysis which we can really draw something out of that system, we can get some information that there is some sort of correlation between that and that. Because of course you have here local faults as well, which is generating effect, and then you've got, which leads me to next question I have.
No, I have not done that yet. Yeah.
Okay, and then you're talking about you showed something about the wave interference or something happens after one landslide generates a tsunami, and then there are, as you call it, complex landslide system. When you complex landslide system, you're expert in modeling, you've done lots of modeling also in there. Can you tell us something about that, there is some sort of the wave interference which generating the water waves? Is there any kind of constructive interference between the waves, or they're destructive constructive? Can I repeat it?
It's interaction between wave that happen inside the bay that might also impact more larger wave that has been recorded.
No, like in seismology, we're talking about there's some wave generated, and then the other waves are kind of coming and adding up to each other.
I understand what you're saying. We have not done a detailed analysis or looking into it very carefully. But one thing I recall clearly is that a couple of things. For example, because of very steep slope on the bank, you can see that some of this wave energy is being trapped near along the shore, or what they call edge wave or trap wave, and that's pretty clear. Now, also, unfortunately, we couldn't show you the video. I'll show you later on my computer. That you can see that each different landslide with the different sizes and the initial condition, they actually will propagate with a little different speed and wavelengths and so on and so forth. They will actually interact with each other. As I said, if I remember correctly, when they all propagate closer to the Palu city, they all sort of bundle together and form a clear wave front. Although, if you look at it at the beginning, initially, each landslide generated tsunami, they looks like the circular wave going out radial direction. But because the bonding of the lateral bonding condition by the bay, they sort of all bundle together at the end toward the south side also because the water is getting shallower.
And you've
in
got
that.
narrow bay.
Yeah,
there,
narrow
right?
bay,
That's
and
why we
there's a
just
shoaling,
kind of
significant
over-exaggerate.
shoaling effects near the city. So the front, the leading front, slow down, wait for the next one coming to catch up. So by the time they all come to near the city, they all appear to be one wave coming in. But that initial wavelength is still much shorter than the observed wavelengths.
Is that
on
why
the
you
video tape.
call it complex?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Please give approach to our two speakers for Palu. It's very nice presentation from Professor Ahmed for the field survey and Professor Piliwi for explanation from other. You can come back to your seat if you want to sit with me. It's fine too. Next speaker is Professor Herman Fritz. It's from Georgia Tech Institute of Technology, United States of America. He did quite a lot of survey both in Palu as well as in Sunda Strait, and I think you will amazed with what he did and the team for the Sunda Strait. Time is yours, and unfortunately we ran out of time, Prof, so it will be 15 minutes. So, thank you.
Okay, assalamu alaikum and salamat siang, I guess now. So first of all, of course, I want to thank you, all the co-authors here from the Center for Marine Research, from the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, the colleagues, of course, from the University of Southern California, and then, of course, the locals, Gagar, sitting up front, Maria Kakta, who's been working with, former student of Professor Kassis and Alakis, going all the way back to Java 1994. Next slide. I want to start with a few photos from a boat ride before it collapsed, actually in September of 2018, when the volcano was active. It shows you the remnant Rakata of the 1883 collapse, and then the about 300-meter high Anak Krakatau before the collapse. You also notice the oversteeped slope towards the southwest in this image here, which is going to be very different to the image afterwards. Next slide. While cruising by in September of 2018, it was quite amazing that the locals were kind of lulled by the continuing activity of eruptions for about 6 months from the event. And the tsunami hazard was kind of taken lightly by locals and by tourists alike. Next slide. Well, we started with the formal procedure, of course, with the permits and the meetings at the ministry here in Jakarta. And you see part of the team here. Next slide. The data, of course, that was available beforehand was primarily tide gauges. So one of the challenges with locally generated tsunamis is that a lot of the tsunami centers and tsunameters are in deep water, and they will not register the tsunami until the shorelines are already hit. The tide gauges in this particular case are also poorly distributed in the sense that they're primarily to the northeast and to the northwest, rather than towards the direction of the collapse towards the southwest. So, unfortunately, they will only register a signal when the villages are washed away in this particular case. Next slide. The tide gauge at Chimandan is sort of the prominent one. And then next slide, the tide gauge at Serang are kind of the two that have a nice recording for this event. Next slide. So now to the field survey. So there were many surveys on the Sunda Strait. And they show you a very different picture of tsunami heights in the order of 10 meters. But when you go to the near source of the tsunami, you end up in a different league. Okay, we are talking 85 meters, more than 80 meters on Rakata and also on Sertung Island. We also surveyed in the direction of the collapse, so there's a huge directionality with these point sources, in particular when it involves collapses and landslide mechanisms, towards the southwest, towards Panaitan and Ujung Kulon National Park. So in many ways, you were fortunate that the directivity was towards an unpopulated area. Had the directivity of the collapse been in the other direction, towards the north, you would have had inhabited Sebesi Island, or you could have had much more densely populated shorelines along Banten, along Java coastline. Next slide. So now when we go to Rakata, this is the remnant of the old Krakatau that collapsed It's more than 800 meters tall, has a very steep slope facing Anak Krakatau, which sits to the north. So in the direction of the collapse towards the south, you have this cornice-shaped coastline, but it's also very steep, more than 45 degrees in terms of slopes. And here now you have a very clean haircut along the shoreline in the jungle compared to the total greenery that was there, the lush, pristine forests that were there before the collapse. The maximum here goes up to 85 meters. And I'll take you on a boat ride around Rakata in a couple of photos. Next slide. So when you come around Rakata, so on the left you can see sort of the cleared shoreline at the lower levels. So here we're about in the 20-meter neighborhood in terms of run up, 10, 15, 20, going up. Then as you keep going, next slide. So here you can see the haircut as it kind of begins, and you can see the old Rakata. Next slide. In this image here, you can see the old vents that were basically from the collapse from the 1883 eruption. You see those in the center, and you can see a clear trim line in the left, and then a trim line to the right, and also some landsliding induced further to the right. Next slide. So now as you come around, you see the vents, and once you go past the vents, it's essentially like a cross-section through the old volcano. Once you go past the vents, then that trim line starts to rapidly increase. Now you quickly get up to 50 meters. We didn't measure whether it was a landslide because we attributed that to being excessively high due to sliding. Next. So you have a slide in there. But then once you go past the slide, actually the trim line keeps going up. So these are images from February the 5th here. So this was our first day out in the field and was quite spectacular. Next slide. And then it keeps going up towards the corniche, and then that's then where you start to get towards the 80 meters. Next slide. And so in the bend in there is where you have the maximum. And then as you come around the tip, it starts to, next slide. As you come around the tip, then it starts to decay very quickly. Next slide. So then you go around the tip, island near the beach. They didn't go very far inland, and you see a very abrupt stop of the inundation with Jose Borrero standing there at the run-up line. And Samsul, our boat captain, actually with the rod here, marking flow depths above ground with things dangling 7-8 meters above the ground. Next slide. This was a wrap for our first day, and with Professor Kostas Sinolakis, the PI of the NSF grant, on our way back to Charita for the night. Next slide. So when we look at the Krakatau volcanic complex, there are basically 4 islands. Okay, so you have Anak Krakatau in the center, you have Rakata to the south, and then you have Sertung to the north. And then you have Panjang or Kesil. To the south, we have Rakata, where we had 85. And very similar on Sertung, also only a few kilometers. So the distances from the collapse are very short here, less than 5 kilometers for all these high measurements, okay? So it's very confined, okay, for an oceanic setting. So at Sertung, then we have also more than 80 meters, 83 meters in one of our measurements there. And as you go to the north, it decays very quickly, as the collapse was essentially direct in between Rakata and Sertung towards Panaitan Island and towards the Indian Ocean. Panjang was completely burned. So next slide. So Panjang, from the volcanic fallout of the eruption, was completely burned, was a torched island. Okay, there is no more green vegetation left on Panjang. And the run-up heights are significantly lower. Next slide. You can see some of the upwashes and some of the downwashes based on the morphological changes. Next slide. And here you can see Jose Borrero showing some of the things dangling, and then Costas in the back as well. So here it gets very difficult because now you have volcanic activity that basically torched the entire island to figure out how high the tsunami was. Next slide. Okay, Anak Krakatau. Well, Anak Krakatau, if you remember the picture from before the event, which is very about 300 meters high, nicely pointed, very oversteepened slopes. Now it's a very mild hump, 100 meters and a little bit more high. So it's quite unspectacular after the collapse. Now looking back towards Panjang, you can also see Rakata on the right in the lower image. Next slide. The morphologic changes were dramatic on Anak Krakatau. This is actually a picture taken at the location where you would previously land as a tourist, okay, when you would go there in September when the eruptions were happening to sightsee and avoid the lava bombs falling towards you. Then basically that would be the location where you would land, and it would be pristine forest there. It would be green, okay, at the location where you would land. So that was, of course, completely changed after the event. Next slide. Now looking from Sertung Island towards Anak Krakatau and Rakata in the background, you see the dramatic difference in elevation here. So Rakata is more than 800 meters high, and then Anak Krakatau is only 100 meters now left. Yeah, as you see here, you see here Vasily surveying a cleared beach on Sertung on the north tip, which was completely cleared. Next slide. There was one lone standing tree here. So Vasilis is this tall Greek student at USC, 2 meters tall, gives you some idea of scale. There's a 5-meter rod in there as well. But we have flow depths above ground here beyond 11 meters, things dangling very high up, and the entire north tip of Sertung completely cleared. Next slide. Then as you go around Sertung Island, you can see a very clean haircut again on this island. You're in the 20-meter neighborhood on the north tip, 25 meters with this haircut, and then it starts increasing as you go southward, basically in the direction of the collapse. Next slide. And you get to these very, very dramatic and now much gentler slopes here. So here we're only talking about 2-to-1 slopes, so less steep than on Rakata. But you see these massive morphological changes, forests completely stripped, and then a massive erosion and gullies cut into the landscape here. And you have tsunami run-up heights in excess of 80 meters. Next slide. This is then a very massive cutout here inside this corniche on Sertung, where we had the highest run-up on Sertung. Next slide. Now, fortunately, all these islands were uninhabited. There is a park ranger camp and a bunker on Panjang Island, but apart from that, they're uninhabited. Unfortunately, the collapse happened towards the southwest, because that's very important. Had the collapse happened in the other direction towards the north, you would have had an inhabited island within 15 kilometers. The run-up heights here are below, and the tsunami heights are below 10 meters on Sebesi Island. So they were very fortunate that the collapse did not happen in the opposite direction. Had the collapse happened 180 degrees in the opposite direction, the outcome would have been very different for the inhabitants of Sebesi Island, because those villages would have been completely washed away. Next slide. So landing at Sebesi Island, that gives us a chance now to interview eyewitnesses, and Maria, of course, was doing a lot of that work there. For us in perfect Bahasa. So the boat docks here are washed away. Next slide. Then Jose and I had a chance to ride to the south with a motorcycle. And when you get to the south tip, this is essentially the view you have of the volcano Rakata in the background, and then Anak Krakatau, sort of this flat hump. And then to the right, you would have Sertung Island. So you have a very clear view of the volcano. However, it did not occur to the locals to hold watch of the volcano, for example, because the eruption had been going on for a very long time. Next slide. Houses were cleared here on the south coast of Sebesi. However, the inundation distance was very short, and the run-up heights were very limited. Next slide. You can see here some boulders transported. You see Jose Borrero to the right, and you see Samsul, our local boat guide, to the left. And then very quickly behind that, the inundation actually stops. So very characteristic for point sources or landslide-generated tsunamis. Next
2
slide.
minutes.
Then we had a chance to make one brief stop on Sumatra. I know that colleagues from Banda Aceh have done way before us much more detailed work on Sumatra, and we'll hear about that later. So Waimuli, there was some impact there. There was some classic tsunami damage. Next slide. However, as you can see, the impact is very limited to a very short stretch from the beach, and then very quickly the houses remain standing, and the run-up is then basically in between the houses. Next slide. And this is another very interesting location. This is now in the direction of the collapse, so the directivity is very important in this. Now here we are 50 kilometers from the Anak Krakatau volcano, and we're now in the direction of the maximum tsunami heights towards the southwest. And we're at the north tip of Panaitan, part of Ujung Kulon National Park. And now you're again in this, 10 meter range here in terms of run-up heights, and you're looking at 300-400 meters in terms of inundation distances. Next slide. And there are massive pileups here on Panaitan in terms of the shredded, pristine forest in the national park, which was completely untouched of human activity before that. Next slide. And you see the massive pileups about 200 meters from the shoreline, and then the run-up continues for some distance further in. Next slide. On Ujung Kulon, on the north tip of that national park, this is now the mainland, the peninsula of the national park, we had the biggest wipeout. So now here we are in almost 12 meters tsunami heights, and we again have pretty much close to 10 meters above ground in terms of flow depths. Next slide. So the landscape here was barren, okay? So it was a complete wipeout of the national park here for about a quarter of a mile for about 400 meters. Next slide. You see some big boulders, you see some overturned trees, and Samsul's actually standing in that picture, but you can barely see him. That's how big those trees are and how big those boulders are. Next slide. And then there's also a beacon here that was transported by the tsunami. Next slide. And then once we got back to the mainland, and once we got out of the national park, there was, of course, then also an opportunity to conduct eyewitness interviews. Fortunately, those villages are out of the main directivity of the tsunami impact. So that is very important. Had the direction been different, the outcome would have been very different for those villages. Next slide. So in summary, we've covered the islands in the straits from Sebesi to the north to Panaitan to the south, and the volcanic complex in between, and then a few locations along the shoreline, and then the Ujung Kulon National Park, all by boat primarily. So the maximum run-up was 85 meters. Next slide. Okay, if you can click this, maybe it runs, maybe it doesn't. Okay, let's skip this. That's fine, you can skip it. So landslides are the best way to generate a tsunami, and I guess this one is probably also not playing. Okay, skip this one as well. The other way is, of course, submarine eruption. You can skip this one as well. Let's go to conclusions. You can skip it, okay. So I want to acknowledge NSF, National Science Foundation funding, and I want to leave you with the conclusions here. So we did a field survey from February the 4th to the 9th, and we had a maximum run-up of 85 meters. We had maximum flow depths above ground of 11 meters on Sertung, and to the north, the tsunami heights decreased very quickly, while to the southwest, you would have much larger heights at more than 3 times the distance compared to Sebesi Island. The inundation distance, however, are very short. So that has to do with the shorter wavelengths of these point source tsunamis, be they from landslides, from collapses, or from volcanic eruptions. They all have very similar signatures in terms of shorter wavelengths, shorter inundation distances, and shorter penetration of the damage patterns. We also had a chance to interview many locals, and unfortunately, one of the issues was that although the tsunami hazard was omnipresent, given the 1883 collapse and tsunami disaster, the locals really did not, were sort of lulled in by the 6 months process of eruption. And even when I was there in September before the collapse, they were kind of nonchalant, living with the hazard at their feet, and there wasn't really too much happening. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges, not just in terms of raising tsunami awareness, education, and preparedness, but I think also in terms of having instrumentation close to the source, potentially having people holding watch if needed, and so forth. Because when it comes to a local event, it can be very difficult to capture that with the classic tsunami warning mechanisms that have been put in place for large tectonic or large subduction zone events. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. And I want to leave you with, with thank you for listening, and a boat ride picture here showing Vasilis, Jose, and Costas, and then myself as well, on the Ujung Kulon National Park on a beautiful day. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you. Because we already ran out of time, if you have any question, 2 questions, please. Yes, one from that side. And other one from this wing. Any question? Okay. Okay, Bu Dikorita, after him. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mona Arif Muda from Lampung University. Would you please explain me when the Gunung Anak Krakatau erupted in last December 2018? The direction of the collapse was on the south, but we have the fact the Panjang Island totally burned, which Panjang Island in the northeast of the Krakatau. Please explain us.
Okay, so I think we have to distinguish there between volcanic effects from the eruption itself and direction of the atmospheric winds and so forth in the straits in terms of where the volcanic ash and so forth is going to land and where the jungle is going to be burned, compared to the gravitational part of the collapse of the island, which is basically that bite of Anak Krakatau, which went to towards the southwest. So I think we have to distinguish between those two different components. They both can be devastating, of course. If you are on a bird Panjang island, then it's not going to be a happy day for you, right? So there are just different hazards. But the volcanic hazards I did not speak about in terms of the fire, the pyroclasts, or the volcanic ash, and from there.
Thank you, Ibu Dikorita.
Continuing that questions and considering the run-up, which is quite high, 85 meter on Rakata, even in Ujung Kulon, it's the longest distance, still 10 meter. So how would you conclude about the mechanism of the tsunami occurrence? Is that only due to the collapse or landslides of the flank, at the flank, or due to the direct blasting, or perhaps combined? Thank you.
Yeah, of course, with the volcanic tsunamis, during an eruption, there are always many processes happening at the same time, and it can be hard to isolate these different processes. Clearly, the collapse plays a very important part, because that's also the part that went towards the southwest in the direction of the largest waves. But likewise, you have the lateral blast that also goes in the same direction. So in terms of attributing what contributes what there, it's a combined effect. But the working with gravity is generally easier, and that's why I wanted to show you those two experiments, actually, but I'll show you those separately afterwards. If you're working with gravity in a collapse scenario, you're more efficient in generating a wave. So when you have a big island that collapses, you tend to get a bigger tsunami. When you're blasting into the air, the explosion or the blast will have a tendency to go towards the location of least resistance, which is up in the atmosphere. So you will generate a wave, and that's why we've done also experiments with the submarine eruptions, looking at that process, but it tends to be even less efficient than a volcanic island collapse. So I think that the collapse is absolutely critical for the tsunami generation.
Okay, I think since we already ran out of time, there is another session that actually we already passed on because we start already also late. So I conclude this session. Thank you very much for Fritz for your presentation. Please give applause to Fritz.
Terima kasih.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience for this session, and I will return this session to the committee. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel Prasetya, is the chair of this session, and thank you also to all the presenters, and please give applause. Okay, now we will have lunch break, then we will start our next session at 1:30. So please enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much. Once enough to all the presenters who will copy your presentation, so please come forward or please come to this desk. Thank you.